We all know terrible judging when we see it, but there are some cases where opinion is split right down the middle as to who won a round, and each side is just as confident as the other. Take, for example, Petr Yan versus Aljamain Sterling. Yan was of course disqualified for an illegal strike in the fourth round, so we only have 3 rounds worth of judges' scorecards. But in those scorecards, we can see that one judge had Sterling ahead 2 rounds to 1. And believe it or not, I've spoken to people about this fight, and a lot of them apparently agree with this scorecard and are under the impression that this was a close fight. I don't think it's a case that some fans are blind. I think there is some other reason behind these strange differences of opinion. That reason being many fans, and indeed many judges, are misinterpreting the judging criteria. The unified rules of MMA identify 3 criteria for scoring a round: effective striking and grappling, aggressiveness, and cage or ring control. However, these 3 criteria are not of equal value. It's more like a tier system. Aggressiveness will only be taken into consideration if effective striking and grappling are even, and cage control will only be taken into consideration if aggressiveness is even. So really, if we want to judge a round correctly, we usually won't even need to take aggressiveness or cage control into consideration. We can all agree that effective striking boils down to volume and or damage, but what about effective grappling? This is where a lot of the confusion begins. A takedown has no inherent value. If a fighter takes his opponent down and then is content to stay in his guard, not doing any damage with strikes, not attempting any subs, and not attempting to pass guard, this takedown is effectively meaningless, or at least it should be meaningless according to the judging criteria. Effective grappling would then mean advancing one's position and or attempting submissions. Let's take for example round 1 of Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Justin Gaethje. The striking exchanges were more or less even, but in the closing moments of the round, Khabib takes Gaethje down and promptly threatens the armbar. Getting this close to an armbar certainly qualifies as effective grappling, so there's basically no argument for Gaethje winning this round. And yet 2 judges scored the round for him, and many fans agree. One of the most consequential fights in which the result was affected by confusion over what constitutes effective grappling was Demetrious Johnson versus Henry Cejudo 2. Henry Cejudo is great, but in retrospect, this fight proved more than anything else how great Mighty Mouse was and how deluded we all were for attributing his dominance to weak competition. Round 1, Johnson outstrikes Cejudo by quite a wide margin. He's just touching him up and not doing a ton of damage, but clearly takes the round. Round 2 is much of the same, but then with about a minute left, Henry Cejudo secures a takedown and then proceeds to lay on top of Johnson in half guard. This is not what we could call effective grappling, and he doesn't dish out any damage from this position either. To his credit, after a scramble, Cejudo is able to land some knees to Johnson's shoulders, but nothing that he does here outweighs what Johnson did in the preceding 4 minutes. Early in round 3, Cejudo gets another inside leg trip takedown, but he cannot keep Johnson down. And after Johnson gets up, the fighters clinch and DJ lands some knees to the body of Cejudo. That takedown should not factor in any judges' scorecards because it amounted to nothing. In fact, Johnson got the better of Cejudo in this exchange. Toward the end of the round, Cejudo manages to take Johnson's back and wrangle him to the mat. But look at this Granby roll. Look how easy DJ makes it look to evade Cejudo. Within seconds he's back to his feet, and then he proceeds to pot shot Cejudo from range as he had been doing all night long. And DJ evades Cejudo with a Granby roll yet again in the closing seconds of the round. There's no way anyone can give round 3 to Cejudo based on the judging criteria outlined by the unified rules. I won't nitpick about giving Cejudo the 4th round because this time around he actually does something with his takedown. He deserves this round. But I have a big problem with giving round 5 to Cejudo. Johnson was picking him apart on the feet same as in the previous rounds. Cejudo gets a takedown but could not keep him down for more than a few seconds, let alone establish any effective attack. This position means absolutely nothing unless the 2 are even in effective striking and effective grappling, which they are not. And in the closing seconds when the 2 appear to be brawling, Cejudo is swinging for the fences and missing. This was certainly not a bell-to-bell beatdown, and unlike many of Johnson's title defenses, it was quite competitive. But if we go by the judging guidelines, it makes no sense to give Cejudo 3 of the 5 rounds, or even 2 rounds for that matter. But the reason he was awarded them is no surprise. He was aggressive, he kept moving forward, and he secured some takedowns, even if most of them amounted to nothing. And he actually made Mighty Mouse look human, which very few had ever managed to do. So this Cejudo win, which ended a historic title reign of one of the all-time greats, probably should have been a loss. The outcome of this fight changed history as we know it, but results like this are a natural byproduct of not correctly understanding the unified rules and the tier system on which judging should be based. So next time you're watching a fight and you want to keep score, keep in mind that this is not anarchy. There are rules, and we all look like dumbasses for not knowing them.